Welcome to the SRS Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron J. Babyar, and I'm the Training Director of Support Raising Solutions. Whether you're a new ministry worker or a veteran looking to increase your competence and confidence, Support Raising Solutions seeks to bless you in your quest to be a spiritually healthy, vision-driven, fully funded Great Commission worker. My guest today is Jeremy Henderson. Jeremy and I get the pleasure of training a boot camp together this week, and so we decided to sit down and just kind of dig in on some random Q&A, some questions that have been sent in to the SRS podcast. And so this is a little bit of a potpourri, a mixed bag, if you will. But first of all, Jeremy, welcome back. Thanks for joining me on the podcast.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Love to be here.
Well, Jeremy, I did not warn you about any of these questions. We're just jumping into it. But one of the more common questions I get, and I'm just going to give it to you, is people will say, hey, I was reading the God Ask. It said something about sending out like a letter to everybody. Like, am I supposed to go ahead and mail a letter to everybody I know before I start raising support? Or is that something that's kind of gone by the wayside because nobody mails letters anymore? Or what am I supposed to do with that? And I know how I answer that. And of course, we would never refute or disagree with anything that Dr. Steve Shadrach said. But you know, sometimes times do change things, and this is one of those things that it might take a little more thought before you run and spend a bunch of money on stamps and envelopes and printing and all that kind of stuff. So what is your answer when someone asks you, do I need to send out a big announcement letter to everybody before I start calling them for appointments?
Right. This is the pre-call letter conversation.
Yes.
And so when I first began raising support, and this was, I guess 6 years ago or so, the pre-call letter was kind of a standard, in a lot of ways. I think people generally in many different organizations suggested that before you make the phone call, send a short letter, not giving all the details, but giving kind of saying, I'll be giving you a call. Here's a snippet of what I'm doing. I'm really excited about what God's doing in my life. I'm going to be giving you a call in the next 2 weeks. Okay. So there's a sense in which I think it really did help some people that maybe were a little bit afraid to just kind of make a quote cold call to someone they haven't talked to in eons.
Right.
And so I think that pre-call letter was really meant to kind of soften that a little bit and give them a little bit more courage to do so. However, the truth be told, you know what? I'm not so 100% sure that that's always the way to go. I think I would suggest, I had this question asked me a lot, and I would suggest for some people, it's really important. For some people, they just kind of get hung up on that. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, take the time to do that. But, there are other ways to think about it.
Yeah.
All right, so what do you think about that, Aaron?
Well, same. I did a letter to a lot of people, and I remember even at the time, and I started raising support before you did, at the time, I began wondering just how strategic that really was. And so I've always been a little sensitive to that question, largely because I was just trying to do everything right. And, if Steve Shadrach said it, or Scott Morton said it, or, somebody said it, I was just working and operating out of a place of, I'm sure there's a reason they're saying this, so I'm just going to do it. And, that served me really well about 95, 99% of the time. But if there was at least 1% of the time where I was like, well, maybe that wasn't so necessary, it would have been the pre-call letter for me. And let me explain why. I was already in full-time ministry. I wasn't having a big career change. A lot of people I was reaching out to, I had already ministered to, or I knew in some way, shape, or form. They knew me as a minister of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so it was almost like, hey, I know I'm already a pastor, and now I'm going to be a pastor. Right. Yeah, it just kind of had some people go like, wait, well, I don't get it. Like, I already know that you're, okay, wait, what? And I was even partially living on support at that point. And so in my case, I don't know that it was necessary. So then it comes to, and you had said, well, that could work for some people. So I think my answer for this one is, if you feel convicted that you really need to take the time and send out a short letter, because people aren't going to read 2 or 3 pages. If you feel the need to send something out to give people a heads up, then you should do that, whether it's digital or paper. However, I don't know that it's always necessary. So short of conviction, or hopefully you have some sort of coach or somebody that is fully funded, that's kind of walking you through some of the stages and steps and things you need to do. But short of something like that, my guess is it's not going to be any more effective than you making a phone call and having a good script as far as what to say when you make the phone call. So any other thoughts about that pre-call letter?
Well, I would just say done is better than perfect. And so for some people, that pre-call letter might just be a form of procrastination, right? So I would say don't let that keep you back from actually doing the call that you need to make.
Yes, so true. All right, so then another question that we got sent in was like, hey, can you help me with my script? What do I say when I make that phone call, when I'm trying to get an appointment? And part of me was totally like, oh, wow, we could do like a whole episode or 2 or 3 just on this. And then I went, no, wait a minute. That's boot camp stuff. And so there are some questions. In fact, there's a couple different ones I've gotten recently. Not that we're trying to withhold information from you, the listener, necessarily, but to really understand it well, you need to kind of sit in it and surround yourself in it and hear some training and be challenged to try some different things and some fits and starts and role playing and things like that to really have a good script. And so with that being said, yes, you need a script. At least some sort of guidance for when you're trying to make phone calls to get appointments. However, I don't know that we could even adequately do a very good job of talking about that over the podcast. And so my encouragement for someone that's really feeling like they need a good script is simply go to an SRS boot camp. It's world-class training, and you might go, oh, it's going to cost me a little bit to do it. I want everything to do free. I just want everything to be free. And I understand that, but Jeremy, Talk to that idea briefly, because I know that kind of leads into a different question of why would SRS charge me money to go get trained on how to raise support? Shouldn't they just have their money? Shouldn't they just be giving me this boot camp for free? What would you say to that?
Oh, I would say, there's something about, there's a phrase, skin in the game, right? There's something about getting something for free versus investing in something for your own benefit that I think changes us in our hearts and minds. And so, if I'm investing in a class or I'm investing in a training or just in something I'm doing, and there's a cost kind of to that, then I'm gonna approach what I do with the seriousness that I would not do it if it were just for free. Because if it was for free, it's like, oh, I can do this anytime. But you know what? If I'm paying for it, there's some considerable preparation it takes to get to the boot camp. There's a lot of homework to do before we get there. And you know what? If it's free, am I going to do that homework? Am I going to really do the prep work? Probably not. So there's a huge strategic reason why you would want to actually pay for something like that instead of just getting it for free.
And of course, I'm not going to get into all the economics of SRS and the Center for Mission Mobilization. In fact, I don't know all of them. I don't need to. I do know this. They're not making money and getting rich off the boot camps. The funds that are, I guess, after they pay for printing and publishing and the artwork and travel expense for facilitators, like the funds that SRS makes, it's not like anybody's retiring on a yacht somewhere. In fact, if there are funds left, and I do know this, they're used for ministry. So it is not a case of somebody or some team of people are trying to charge all these missionaries money and making their money off the missionaries. In fact, I don't mind saying this, Jeremy. I know that you'll train 2 or 3 public boot camps along with me every year, and of course Micah May does several, and of course I do most of the public boot camps. None of our salaries come from the boot camps. Each of us raises and lives off support. So we're walking the walk and talking the talk. And so when we say there are some things that you just, to really get trained on it adequately, to really invest your time and really grow and further understand how to take that next step in raising your support. And if we say you need to go to the boot camp for that, there's a reason behind that. It's because your time is valuable, and this is actually a wise investment of your time so that you are trained, ready to move forward in taking steps towards being spiritually healthy, vision driven, and fully funded. So that was one of those questions that we're answering and not answering all at the same time, so to speak, because it's just to get a good script. Yeah, you probably need to go to a boot camp, or you at least need to have a good support raising coach that's working with you and helping you find your words for inviting somebody to sit down and hear about your ministry.
Can I just add one thing to that?
Yeah, please, go ahead.
The truth is that like the workbook that we receive as part of our boot camp, that kind of interactive, I take that and I will reference back to that, experience. And so it's not as if it's just kind of a once and done thing. This, the boot camp really does kind of provide this ongoing learning, platform for you to grow and keep growing.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of residual benefits, not just the event itself.
Yeah, there's foundational learning that points you back to Scripture and also points you forward in how to think about future tasks. If you love to read, we have an entire blog article archive on support raising, from biblical encouragement to practical tips to stories and personal experiences. Meanwhile, there's different articles that are more along the lines of shaping culture, elevating training, and building infrastructure so that you can multiply your coaching within your missions organization. Either way, you might want to go check out some of our articles at supportraisengsolutions.org/blog. Let's kind of change and go to a different question. We had a question about online celebrations. Someone was asking like, hey, I wanted to do kind of an event thing for my supporters, and now with COVID-19 and all that kind of stuff, what am I supposed to do with that? We're locked down, and we usually do like an annual celebration event, and I get the feeling there might be a little bit of a fundraising element to that as well. And so in this day and age right now, when we're recording this, the U.S. is still somewhat locked down.
Sure.
I mean, you can go to some restaurants and some you can't yet. And if you do go into that restaurant, it's not the same thing it used to be. Even like the menu's smaller, the seating's more spread out. So yeah, some people aren't ready for public events. So what would you say to someone that they were really hoping to invite their support team to, I don't know, Cake and Punch or something like that sometime this summer, and they're going, oh no, I wanted to do an event. How do I do an event? Jeremy, do they need to do an event? Or what might be another way that they could celebrate what God's been doing in their ministry and share, and maybe even there might even be a slight special ask connected to that?
Sure.
Thoughts?
Sure. I kind of have thoughts on this from two different angles. One is organizationally, and one is just personally.
Okay.
So from an organizational standpoint, we had to actually postpone a large event that we have, our large annual fundraising event for Go2 Nations. We had planned, and it just landed right in the middle of the crisis. And so we rescheduled that for later in the fall of this coming of 2020.
Okay.
And then we realized, you know what, we don't know where things are going to be in September. And so we actually ended up canceling it for this year and looking ahead to the next year. But let me tell you the reasoning behind that. We were going to do just a virtual event. But the virtual event itself, there are some great websites, etc., that talk about how to do a virtual event. But you know what? We thought there's nothing that's going to take place of the in-person experience here. And if we want to get really, kind of down deep into who we are, and especially on the fundraising side, we really felt like this is better done live. Now, from a missionary standpoint, if we're doing this as a small kind of event, we've seen some great success and heard of some great success by doing some, creative online events. I've got a friend in ministry that did some sort of, I don't want to use the word telethon, something like that for the organization. And they raised over $1 million in the middle of the crisis, where people think, oh, no one's giving during the crisis. Oh, you know what? It's virtual may not be the right answer. I'm saying it's the right answer for some people. And I think that some people are really maximizing that. So with the Zoom platform and other kind of online platforms, you can actually do some celebrations like that, and people are comfortable that way.
Right. I'll just touch on it briefly from a different angle, perhaps a less popular angle, but I know that Scott Morton was not that long ago. He was on the podcast with me. In fact, he's on every now and again. And I don't know that Scott would say you can't do an event. You shouldn't do an online celebration. But I know that Scott would probably ask, so, what is your point behind this? Right. And if your point is to get money, then maybe you don't need that online celebration quite so much. Right. Like in that standpoint, you probably need to have a better emphasis on your relationship and perhaps calling someone and letting them know about a need, and if possible, sitting down with them personally or maybe doing a Zoom call. That's likely going to be more effective in most cases for most of us. And so I always walk this delicate line with SRS of people needing finances. That's what brings them to us, and wanting to respect that and not mock that or anything else. I get it. And also going, wow, far too often we are looking for shortcuts. What's the quick way to get the money? And that is just not the point of partnership in ministry. Right. And so be careful. If you're going to do an online sort of event, be careful that the time and the emphasis is more on celebrating what God is doing with your vision and where you're headed next, over a big cash push. Because just a little fair warning, if it's just a big cash push, you're going to see people clicking off and leaving your online event quickly, and probably not hanging out in many situations.
Yeah, I want to add to that as well. You know what? Some people have said, oh, well, you know what? We had planned a live in-person event, and now we'll just do it virtually, and we'll save a lot of money in doing so. But the problem is, it really isn't the best choice for so many people, like it kind of wasn't for us as an organization this year.
Okay. So we're not saying it's impossible,
right?
But we're saying it's fraught with problems. and so you're going to want to have a well-planned event, and also keep in mind you can have platform and other tech issues that you're not even anticipating. I've unfortunately heard of many people having massive issues recently that they didn't realize until they'd already said, all right, let's get started, everybody get on, and crash. So you definitely don't want that. All right, so let's touch on a couple of more things here, Jeremy. One just has to do with this idea of a lot more personalized feedback. So I have seen some questions recently as far as people getting a coach, and I know that we certainly recommend that. I know that like within your organization, Jeremy, at Go-To Nations, you have 3 different coaches that help staff, right? And so even though we want people to do their Bible study and do all their pre-boot camp homework and then attend a boot camp, we know most people really need a support raising coach. But Jeremy, if somebody were to call you at Go-To Nations and be like, hey, can we just use one of your coaches? What would you have to say?
I would say, well, had they gone through boot camp?
Right.
That's exactly what I would say first.
Okay, good.
All right.
Good.
And we only actually coach those within our own organization.
Okay.
That's kind of part of our policy.
Okay.
I would affirm them for the fact that they're actually seeking coach, because we realize, even the best, most well-paid professional athletes, every single one of them have a coach.
Yeah.
There's just something about coaching that is absolutely needed. And so, but there are, other organizations out there that do coach people from, a variety of different places. And so I've heard of Tailored Fundraising. Mm-hmm. I've heard some good things about them. I've been to their website. Another one that more recently has come into my, view has been Exago. They do a holistic coaching and an MPD coaching side. And so if you want more information about that, you can look that up at Exago. That's exago.org. But the point is, I absolutely agree, is that it's not just getting the content, because I can get it and then I can just keep it to myself. Mm-hmm. And if I don't let someone else speak into me, then you know what? I'm just not going to get any better. Coaches in your life to actually get you to your goal.
Let me just affirm what you said there from the standpoint of what I have seen for so many support raisers is they invest money in the boot camp and then they want to go out and kill it and get it done and raise their support, which I think is fantastic. I want people to go for it. But far too many of us really need someone to kind of bounce ideas off on a regular basis. And so even if you, just your organization doesn't provide someone for you, or you're not wanting to move forward with finding one elsewhere, as far as like someone professionally coaching you, listen, find somebody who's fully funded. Find somebody who's willing to speak into your life, but please don't take advice from somebody who's never been fully funded. Unfortunately, I really feel the need to say that clearly. I have heard so many people that have received so much bad advice from someone who's never been fully funded. In fact, just to pick on that briefly, I have a friend who was coached to go print out some table tents and go into coffee shops and leave those on coffee shop tables and go home and pray and wait for people to call him as a means of being really spiritual and as a means of raising his support.
Did it work?
Absolutely not. His phone didn't ring at all. And so you really need to talk to somebody who knows what they're talking about. And this is true, by the way, even if you're kind of a type 3 Enneagram like myself and you just want to go out and kill it and get it done, you're still going to go faster and better and be more efficient if you have somebody speaking truth into your life and a little bit of accountability on a weekly basis. So yeah, we're big fans of you having some sort of person that's coaching you during your real big push of support raising, which for most of us is going to last at least 100 days. So, all right, we got one more, and we're going to kind of end on kind of a tougher one, Jeremy. And I know we didn't pre-rehearse these questions and answers, but here we go. What do you do when you have some family members that just aren't being very nice? And they are telling you that you're a beggar and you shouldn't be doing this, and they say they're going to support you, or maybe they say they won't support you, or maybe they say they'll support you but they just give you like $100 once and then tell you to go away, and man, your feelings are hurt and you're not sure how to deal with all that. Like, this is a real question. We get variations of this quite a bit. I do, I'm sure you do as well. How do people approach that really difficult situation?
Yeah.
And I realize this isn't just a soundbite. We're just giving a soundbite answer to it. But I know you have a big heart for this, Jeremy. So what are your thoughts?
Well, I do. And you kind of have to think about it this way. What are your options? You know, what are you really going to do? You have two ways you can go. You can either take that internally. You can either listen to, obviously, the whole idea of, oh, that you're just a beggar. Well, we know that's a lie, right? Mm-hmm. And we know the author of lies. We know kind of where that comes from. I'm not saying that that family member is the enemy. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that we need to this is where we have to kind of use spiritual discernment and say, okay, where is this thought coming from? And then you know what? Is that we move in the direction of our strongest thoughts. Right? Craig Rochelle said that. I think that's a great quote. Okay. And so since we move in that direction, we need to really watch what we're thinking in that and not allow that mentality to go, oh my goodness, make me feel less than. And so I would say, hey, this is an example where we really have to rise up, push through the fear, push through the hurt, push through the pain, and just do it anyway. And say, I'm going to serve God because I know for a fact that God has called me to this. And you know what? Later on, I would say, Aaron, it could be that the family sees this after a time. I know, even in my family, I had some family members that really kind of questioned that when I first started. Oh yeah. Right? Oh yeah. The word beggar, I think I heard that kind of at the very beginning.
Well, I was definitely told I'm not a real missionary.
There we go. Yeah, exactly. And so later on,
not by my parents, by the way. Sorry, Mom and Dad. I wasn't. Yeah, that wasn't on you.
Just to be clear,
that was a different family member.
Right. But later on, you know what? It's different now. So years have gone by, and there's I think a different level of understanding on their part. Mm-hmm. There's a different level of respect because they've seen that. Oh my goodness, they walked this out even though I was down on them to begin with. And so I think that's how God works. I think He changes through us just being faithful.
Okay. All right. I would say, seek truth, and this would be another one of those great reasons to get training and to get coaching, because you're going to find people that are speaking truth into your life as you're a support raiser. Guess what? You are not the first person to have your family give you a hard time for going into full-time ministry and raising support. There are other people that have been down this road before, that have felt your pain, that have navigated through it, and can give a lot more care and insight into your situation than what a couple of guys with a microphone and a podcast can do right now. In fact, Jeremy, it seems like every other boot camp, at least that I do, there's somebody that's there with this hurt. And they just get loved on, whether it's because there's a question like in the larger group that gets discussed, or sometimes it's just people at their own table, perfect strangers the day before, right? And they're laughing and loving and crying and encouraging and emboldening each other for the sake of Jesus Christ. And so I just want to say I'm very sensitive to this. This is a hard one. We're not fully answering it here. And yet you do need to have voices of truth and love in your life. It's sad when that's not your family. I know that's a sense of a loss, but don't stop looking for that and don't stop seeking that out. So anyway, well, it was a bit of a grab bag today, Jeremy. We just jumped all over the place, but these were listener emails and questions and things that we got. So I really appreciate you being on this podcast again with me this time. I love having you as a guest now and then. We hit so many different things. I'm not even sure how to summarize this here at the end. So, but I know, as is my habit, I give the guest the last word. So go ahead, brother. Any final words of wisdom?
I just kind of to pick up on that last point we talked about. Being in boot camp, there's something about being in the fight together with others that are walking through some of the same struggles. It builds that sense of koinonia, that sense of fellowship. I think back to the Lord of the Rings, right? Or one of those, the Fellowship of the Ring. There's something about being with like a band of brothers to have truth spoken into you that is just priceless, and we all need it.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Jeremy. Appreciate you being on the podcast today.
Thanks, Aaron.
Thanks for joining us for this episode. We would love to hear your ideas for future content. Please visit supportraisingsolutions.org/feedback to share your thoughts and questions. Also, wherever you download your podcast from, be sure to subscribe for future episodes and come back each week to gain more insight into the process of building and maintaining your personal support team.